Find more great shows or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to this very special episode of the Masterclass. As you can see, things are a little bit different today on the Masterclass. I'm not your usual host, Hader, but don't worry, all the Hader fans out there, I'm just keeping the seat warm for this episode. Hader will be back for the next show. We're in a different studio. We've got a little bit of a production setup going on. We've got the tactics board, but I know for all the fans of the Masterclass, you'll all be relieved to know that we've still got Rob in the building. Rob, how you doing?
I'm good, Abdul. How are you, mate?
Not too bad. In fact, I am super excited to get into this show because we're going to try and give you a different perspective on the usual sort of analysis that we usually do. And another thing that I want to let you all know is that this is not a one-off. This is something that we're trying to do, get this show to another level, make it bigger, make it better. So what we need from you guys out there, the loyal subscribers, we see the comments, we read the comments, we know that you love the show. We need you to go and spread the word, because this is only possible because of all the support that we received so far. So if you're subscribed to the channel, go tell your friends, go tell your families, your neighbors, your colleagues, the milkman, the postman, whoever it is, get the word out there, make this channel a bigger community so we can give you bigger and better content. And if you haven't subscribed already, what are you doing, guys? Subscribe, click the subscribe button, join us on this side of the party, and you'll get more of this every week. So Rob, let's start off with the game that happened the other night against Atalanta, Champions League night in Italy. Last gasp equalizer from that man again, Ronaldo, to make it 2-2, but not a pretty performance at all, was it? We started off with the 3-5-2, which was to be expected based on the result that we had on the weekend against Spurs. But as soon as Rafael Varane got injured in the middle of the first half, Oli went back to type, reverted back to a 4-2-3-1, and it just wasn't convincing enough. Can you explain to us the potential reasons and the thought process that Oli went through in order to change that system, and what does that mean moving forward?
Well, what we did see is how important Rafael Varane is to Manchester United. So we saw that Ole started with, as you said, the 3-4-3 or 3-5-2-1. Bruno in a more advanced role coming out of the midfield. Marcus on the left-hand side here, and of course Cristiano up top. But we saw with the shape that when Rafael Varane got injured and came off the football pitch, Ole immediately, with around 7 minutes to go in the first half, went to a back four, which was a little bit of a surprise. Back to a double pivot, and then the three classical attackers behind Cristiano Ronaldo. The shape that all Manchester United fans are very familiar with. But what's happened this season is that the 4-2-3-1 just simply hasn't worked. Manchester United have collapsed in so many games. They found it difficult to keep the ball. So when you look at the shape here and you look at where Ronaldo is and where Bruno is, again, the kind of pushing up the pitch of the fullbacks became difficult for Manchester United. And you saw that the double pivot itself found it hard to address the midfielders. And Atalanta had a lot more space on the football pitch when United switched away from three at the back.
So Rob, let's talk about Mr. Paul Pogba, a man that we always talk about when we talk about Man United, but he didn't really have a great game yesterday, did he? He looks a little bit lost in his system, but we all know he is a world-class player. So what can Oli do to fit him into this system, and how can we get the best out of him?
Well, what can Ole do? So we started the game obviously as a 3-5-2. Pogba was part of that central midfield. He had quite a poor game. Then we saw United revert to the 4-2-3-1, as we can see here on our tactics board and our setup. And he didn't really have a good game then, did he? But we've seen that Paul Pogba, when he features in the double pivot here, that he struggles. And that's because he's not particularly a defensive-minded player. You know, he doesn't move the ball from A to B to C in a kind of quick enough manner. So the game obviously against Atalanta, we had a double pivot of McTominay and Pogba together. And Paul Pogba was coming here to collect the ball off the centre-backs, off the full-back, to try and start the play moving forward and being progressive. But what we found here is that when Pogba has the ball in these areas, This is quite a difficult pass to make, obviously into the front three. Now he can make it, but the problem is that it's a difficult pass to do. You might hit it 1 out of 10 times. So when Paul Pogba's giving the ball away in front of your back four here, you're in danger. So this is something that we've seen repeatedly through Paul Pogba's career at Manchester United when he's played in the double pivot in a defensive function. I think what we see is that the reason why he got pulled is that when United went on to try and score the second goal and he was off the pitch, we saw a change in the double pivot, that we saw that Matic came on to be able to do some screening and to do more of the defensive work. And Jadon Sancho had a more freedom, kind of roaming role along the front of the midfield. And lo and behold, Manchester United got the equaliser that they needed.
So let me run 2 things by you. So earlier this week, Rio Ferdinand has said part of the blame for Pogba's failure at United has to go down to the club, not finding the right system for him, not putting the right players around him, but also part of the responsibility has to go down to Paul because, at the end of the day, he's a professional player. Mm-hmm. If you supplement that with what Paul Scholes said after the Atalanta game, which is that Pogba will always need a Roy Keane type figure next to him to tell him where to go, to tell him when to pass, to tell him when to dribble. Scholes said that he'd probably need that all the way up until he's 35. That's a bit of a problem for a player that costs £89 million. It's one of the most iconic players around the world. And you want him to be your leader. Where do we go from here? What does the future hold for Pogba?
I think that's a difficult one because obviously that's Paul Scholes' professional opinion. If you ask Paul Pogba, I think he probably would say that he doesn't need his hand holding. He's won a World Cup, he's won lots of trophies. I think it's more about where he wants to play on the football pitch. So does he want to play in the double pivot? The answer to that, of course, is no. Why? Because Paul Pogba, in his head, is an attacking player. Paul Pogba wants to be up at this part of the pitch. He wants to play along the front 3 line here, where he can be closer to Bruno Fernandes, closer to Cristiano Ronaldo, and he himself can encroach towards the box. Now, that's where he wants to play. He said it in the last major championship with France, that that's his preferred position. He wants to get goals and get assists. But I tell you what, here, he's not getting either of those 2 things. And I think that hurts him in terms of motivation. That he should be playing better in this position, this part of the park. But he's not the only person that's had an issue in his 4-2-3-1. We've seen that the whole Man United team have really struggled in this shape.
So another player that didn't have a good game against Atalanta and who hasn't, in truth, had a good game in a long, long time is actually Harry Maguire. Can you talk us through what's going on right now with Harry Maguire and probably just use the example of the second goal for Atalanta to explain exactly where the deficiencies are currently?
Yes, of course. And I think we've seen with Harry Maguire, it's most important to kind of make this differential, is that he's not fit yet. He really isn't fit. He still needs more games. He's a big unit. He needs that fitness in his legs to be able to perform at an optimum. But as you said there, the second goal was a huge problem. We saw obviously here again with our tactics board that Bailly went close to the striker in this area here. And Harry Maguire decided to kind of hold his line there. So this channel there runs through the middle. Really what Maguire should have done is that he should have come across and protected that. He knows that he's going to get outrun in a straight race. And what do we see happen? He kind of ended up going towards the box this direction. The forward went that way. And then we saw that Harry Maguire dived in. And he was very lucky actually not to give away a penalty. But you could see that he was desperate. But I think it's indicative of the whole United defence. Disorganised, people not taking responsibility, and a huge lack of communication. So I think if they set up like this against Manchester City, they could have some problems.
Talking about Man City, they are the next opponents coming up this weekend. Surprisingly, actually, we're only 3 points behind them, despite all of our troubles that we've had this season and the relative good form that Man City have had. A win on Saturday could see us be level on points with them. How can Ole Gunnar Solskjaer make sure he gets the win against Man City?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult. I think it looks like Manchester United are going to play 4-2-3-1. Certainly now Rafael Varane's going to be out for a number of weeks. So that system of 3-5-2 appears to be on the back of Varane and having him in the team, and now he won't be. So I think, again, looking at a tactics board, United setting up in a classic 4-2-3-1. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer likes to play the system. Double pivot in place, number 10 and striker. And I think the centre-backs will probably be Lindelof and Maguire. But he played fairly well in that game against Atalanta, but I'm not sure whether he will get the start in this match. And the problem here is the way that City can press you in different waves on the football pitch. So at the top end for City will be, of course, probably Foden as the false nine. You'll also see on the left-hand side, Grealish. And you'll see on the right-hand side, who started this year, is Gabriel Jesus. I do fear for this Manchester United backline once these players start getting onto them, because we've seen the lack of mobility and the lack of communication. You'll also see that that Foden will go to the left and he'll also come to the right to create overloads. And once they're past that last line, all we'll see with Manchester United is they start to fall back. And that will allow Manchester City to move through the double pivot in a much more efficient way. It's going to be a very difficult day for Manchester United. And the way that City play with their front three, the balance is obviously in the favour of Pep Guardiola's side.
Thanks so much for that, Rob. Very fascinating show. And listen, guys, if you liked what you saw today, please let us know in the comments and please get the word out. It's a little bit different perspective that we're trying to bring you. Hopefully you find it beneficial. And if you have, keep an eye out for the next show and we'll be there trying to bring you the tactics bigger and better as always. So stay tuned in to the masterclass. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on the socials at TF Masterclass. And Rob, your Twitter handle?
Yep, at _Rob_B on Twitter.
Make sure you're following him. Make sure you're following the channel. And we'll see you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.